You're sitting at the kitchen table on a holiday afternoon, the same table where you used to do your homework, surrounded by people who share your DNA. The air is thick with the smell of roasting meat and the echoes of old arguments that never quite got resolved. Your brother is making the same joke he's made for 15 years, and your mother is hovering, asking if you've finally started eating better. You look around the room and realize that while you know their faces better than your own, you feel like a tourist who lost their map. Why does being home feel like being undercover in a foreign country? You laugh at the right times, you pass the salt, and you perform the version of you that they remember. But inside you feel 1,000 miles away. Here's what nobody tells you. Feeling like the odd one out isn't a sign that you're broken, and it isn't proof that you're better than them either. Here's what's actually happening. You are experiencing a high level of differentiation of self. This is the psychological ability to separate your own intellectual and emotional functioning from that of the family ego mass. You aren't a black sheep because you're a rebel or because you're difficult. You are a black sheep because your nervous system has matured past the point of the collective family system. You are the cycle breaker, the one who has decided that the old family operating system is no longer compatible with the person you are becoming. You've stopped being a mirror and started being a window. Let's look at why this happens, starting with the work of Dr. Murray Bowen, the founder of family systems theory. He introduced the concept of differentiation of self, which is basically your ability to keep your own shape when the people around you are pressuring you to conform. Think of your family as a literal magnetic field. For most of your life, you were a metal filing pulled toward the center by the force of their expectations and shared history. But as you grew, you transformed into a different material, maybe wood or glass, and suddenly the magnet doesn't work on you anymore. This is a massive revelation for your brain, but it's terrifying for the system. When you refuse to be pulled, the rest of the family has to work harder to maintain the old balance. Does it feel like they're constantly trying to remagnetize you back into the roles you've outgrown? Next, we have to look at a mechanism called the identified patient, a concept popularized by the legendary family therapist Virginia Satir. In many families that struggle with unspoken tension or trauma, the system subconsciously chooses one person to carry all the mess. You might have been the troublemaker, the sensitive one, or the one who always makes things complicated. By labeling you as the problem, the rest of the family gets to avoid looking at their own dysfunction. You are essentially the lightning rod for the family house. As long as the lightning hits you, the rest of the building doesn't have to catch fire. When you start to feel different or pull away, you are essentially refusing to be the lightning rod anymore. This is why, the moment you start getting healthy, the family often gets angrier with you. You aren't just changing yourself, you're forcing them to look at the storm they've been ignoring. Then there is the fascinating research of Dr. Thomas Boyce from the University of California, San Francisco regarding dandelion versus orchid children. He found that most children are dandelions. They can survive and even thrive in almost any environment, including fairly stressful ones. But about 20% of the population are orchids. These children are biologically more sensitive to their context. In a bad environment, they wilt. But in the right environment, they become spectacular. If you feel different from your family, it's very likely you were the orchid in a field of dandelions. While they could shrug off the passive aggression, the loud noises, or the emotional coldness of your home, those things were toxic to your specific nervous system. You weren't weak for being affected by things they ignored. You were just built with a more high-resolution sensor for the world. Have you considered that your difference is actually just a higher level of biological sensitivity? We also have to look at individuation, a term coined by Carl Jung to describe the lifelong process of becoming who you actually are, separate from your parents and your culture. Jung believed that most people stop this process halfway because the gravity of the family is too strong. To truly individuate, you often have to go through a period of deep loneliness where you feel like an alien. It's like a seedling that has to push through the dark, heavy soil to find the sun. For a while, the seedling is alone in the dirt. And it probably feels like it's failing because it's no longer a seed, but it isn't yet a flower. If you feel different, it might just be because you're the only one in your family who had the courage to stop being a seed. You're in the dirt phase and where the old world is gone, but the new one hasn't fully bloomed yet. Finally, let's talk about intergenerational trauma and the work of Dr. Rachel Yehuda at Mount Sinai. She has shown that trauma can literally leave chemical marks on our genes, affecting how we respond to stress. In a family, this often looks like a relay race where every generation passes a baton of anxiety or silence to the next. But in every family, there is eventually someone who drops the baton. They say, I'm not running this race anymore. That person is you. When you feel different, it's often because your brain is trying to process ancestral ghosts that everyone else has agreed to pretend don't exist. You are the one who finally looked under the bed. It's an exhausting job, and it's one that makes you feel profoundly alone because everyone else is still running the race, and they don't understand why you've stopped to catch your breath. Notice how this manifests in your adult life when you're away from the dinner table. Think about the last time you achieved something great at work, and your first instinct was to hide it from your family. This is why you are a translator in your own life, spending your energy translating your family's chaos to your friends and translating your friends' healthy boundaries to your family. Notice how you feel a sudden sharp spike of guilt when you're actually happy. This is the loyalty contract of the family system. You feel like a traitor for thriving in a way that they never could. Notice how you might attract partners who also feel like orphans or misfits. You're building a found family because the original one feels like a pair of shoes that are 3 sizes too small. You've spent your whole life trying to curl your toes so you don't complain, but you finally realized that the shoes are the problem, not your feet. Think about the way you communicate. Do you find yourself over-explaining your choices to people who haven't even asked? This is a lingering habit from having to justify your difference to people who refuse to see you. Notice how you feel too much in some rooms and not enough in others. This is the classic black sheep oscillation. At work, you might be the person who notices the tiny shifts in the office mood before anyone else. This hypervigilance isn't a gift. It's a survival skill you honed so you could predict the weather in your childhood home. You are a high-level emotional detective who is finally realizing that the crime happened a long, long time ago. You don't have to keep investigating every room you walk into. There is, however, a difficult side to being the one who gets out. This trait becomes a problem when your difference turns into a permanent wall of resentment. There's a very thin line between healthy differentiation and a lone wolf persona that refuses to let anyone in. If you spend your whole life being not like them, you are still letting them define you, just in reverse. You can become so addicted to being the misunderstood outcast that you push away people who actually want to understand you. Be honest with yourself. Are you keeping your distance to stay safe? Or are you keeping it because you don't know who you are without a them to rebel against? It's a lonely thing to be a rebel without a cause, and it's even lonelier to be a person who has forgotten how to be a part of something. The real shift happens when you realize that you aren't an alien. You're an explorer. You were sent out by your family system. Not because they liked you, but because the system needed someone to find a new way to live. You are the scout who went over the mountain to see if there was better land. The fact that you feel different is proof that you've succeeded. You don't have to hate the people back in the valley. But you don't have to live there anymore either. Think of yourself as a bridge between the old world and the new one. You carry the stories of the valley. But you breathe the air of the mountain. You are not the wrong piece of the puzzle. You are just from a completely different puzzle that hasn't been built yet. One day you'll realize that the loneliness of being different was actually just the quiet. You needed to hear your own voice for the first time. What was the specific moment you realized your operating system was different from the rest of your family? Let's talk about those glitch in the matrix moments in the comments, because seeing how many other aliens are out there is the fastest way to feel human again. Next, we're going to talk about the psychology of the scapegoat and why Being the problem child was actually the only way you could stay sane in a house that was pretending to be normal.